Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It's the Thursday, January 15th, 2026 episode of The Marco Dre Show. Thank you for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go as always. Let's go into my first article right now. This is one you're going to like very much. And it's titled, Nobody Likes Pam Bondi Anymore. I like this article because I really don't like Pam Bondi myself. I find her ineffective. I find her incompetent. And you know who else does? President Donald Trump. Now, it's reported that he is really unhappy with her performance as Attorney General right now. And members of the administration have spoken to the Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump finds Bondi weak and ineffective in executing his agenda. Now, she's had numerous criminal referrals as of late, and she's done absolutely nothing about them. The president now believes that Bondi is not moving quickly enough to prosecute many of these people referred criminally, and has failed to mitigate the Jeffrey Epstein cloud surrounding the White House. She's been a blunder on this, an absolute blunder. Remember, she went on the news and she came out and said, you know what, I've got the book right on my desk right now. We're looking at it. We're going to have answers soon. And then from there it went on to, this is a big hoax. It's a Democratic hoax. There's nothing there. We've looked at, I didn't really mean the book was on my desk. I mean, there's no real book. There's no black book. Well, I'm sorry, lady, you just told us there was a black book. I mean, you're part of the campaign that Trump ran on was going after the Jeffrey Epstein associates, or I don't know what you'd call them, affiliates, people that have committed crimes. But Bondi's become aware of Trump's frustration, and with a spokesperson for her stating that she remains focused on executing Trump's directive to enhance public safety. Yeah, right. Well, then why have you arrested anybody? Do we honestly believe that Jeffrey Epstein acted alone? It was just him in Ghislaine? Yet time after time we see multiple of the same people around these two creeps? Why did he have... She needs to say this to us. Why were rooms in his mansions, his various mansions across the world, why were they all bugged with recording devices? Audio and video. That's a bit odd, don't you think? Was he just recording himself in the act? Well, they need to tell us this, don't they? It's a bit strange. Don't you think so, folks? I think so, too. Now, it's been reported, too, Bondi has been less visible around the White House in recent months. She didn't even appear with President Trump to announce the extraordinary capture of the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, even though her agency was one who prosecuted the man. By the way, that's falling apart in and of itself, too, is it not? They're trying to say he was this cartel leader, this drug kingpin. Nothing could be further from the truth, by the way. Even the own DEA website says that barely any cocaine that enters the United States has come from Venezuela. A very, very small trace amount, at best. It's minute. It's nothing compared to what comes in from Mexico and Puerto Rico, one of our territories itself, into the United States. And by the way, who controls the drugs in the U.S.? Mexico. On our streets, it's still Mexico. Yet we're going after Nicolas Maduro for some reason. So that case is falling apart. By the way, the charge for possessing a machine gun in Venezuela? I don't understand this woman. Maybe it's me. Maybe I don't understand this woman. I don't know how this could stick in a court of law in the United States. But the idea that he's the one killing Americans with cocaine, a baseless claim in and of itself. Really it is. Anyone that looks at the information can see that Venezuela acts as a transit hub at best for drugs coming out of Colombia. And those drugs go into West Africa and then into Europe. They don't go to the United States by and large. Again, if at any, it's a fraction of what comes in from Puerto Rico and largely Mexico. And by the way, the only thing that was going through Venezuela that we could trace was cocaine. That's it. Look at what comes out of Mexico. You have cocaine, you have heroin, you have fentanyl, you have methamphetamines, you have other illicit drugs, you have marijuana still coming in illegally to the country that these drug cartels are profiting off of. They're smuggling human beings in the United States. There's sex trafficking into the United States, weapons trafficking in the United States, and we're going after Venezuela. This woman has been a complete and utter blunder. I said before to you, I'll say it again. President Trump should have gone with Ken Paxton of Texas. The guy's a stalwart conservative. He went after the Biden administration. They hated him. But he wasn't afraid to go after what was right. Now, of course, he's running for Senate now, so I think that is a lost opportunity. But he would have been fantastic, I think. I think he would have really gotten in there and got to the bottom of this. And he would have been transparent with the American people. Bondi doesn't seem that confident when she talks. I mean, that's just the impression I get when I see her speaking, when I do see her speaking. But she's dropped the ball on so many of these different cases, not just Epstein. She's going to drop the ball on this Maduro thing, too, by the way. It's not going to go over well. And then witness the whole basis for going in there in the middle of the night at 3 a.m, killing over 100 civilians, mostly, 32 of them being Cuban bodyguards, who, by the way, have been repatriated back to Cuba as of late. Very, very shocking, too, by the way. But she's dropped the ball on Russiagate. She's dropped the ball on COVID on January 6th. She's dropped the ball on the 2020 election. There's so many things that she has not done. And this is what she should be getting to the bottom of. Yes, I think it's great that she's gone after Somalis convicted of fraud, or charged with fraud, I should say. Of course, people attacking DHS officers, ICE officers. Okay, I like that too. Don't get me wrong. But where are the big fish in this pond here? Where are they? She's not done anything about it. So really disappointing, I'd have to say, at best. But again, this isn't the first time Trump has criticized Bondi over the issues with what she's done. And by the way, it's becoming much more frequent. Now, is he going to relieve her? Is he going to find somebody new? Well, he's been known to do that. He gets fed up with people over time. He fires them. That happens. We saw this in his first administration. Some people left willingly, other people that he wanted out. But he needs to get someone in there that's going to get to the bottom of these things. We need transparency. And not just on Epstein. By the way, where is the information she was supposed to give on January 3rd? The day we went in and, of course, extracted Maduro and his wife in the middle of the night. She was supposed to have a press conference that day to explain to the American people why the information on the Epstein files has not yet been released by law. And yet nothing. Crickets. It's been crickets since then. Today's January 15th. Where is the information? What are her and Todd Blanche doing? It's amazing to me. But of course, we've brushed that under the rug because now we're focused on Venezuela and Maduro. We're focused now on Iran, what's happening with us in Russia, all these other things. And it gets swept under the rug until somebody takes it back out again. You know, Rand Paul was on with Joe Rogan recently, and one of the things he said about Fauci was, again, startling, of course, but it just shows the incompetence of not just the Trump DOJ right now, but of course the Biden DOJ in and of itself. Take a listen to this.
We have, under the Biden administration, I sent criminal referrals for Anthony Fauci to Merrick Garland twice, and I sent them evidence that he had lied to Congress, which was a felony. They just ignored me. I've been working with Bobby Kennedy, and he's been very helpful on this. I have a good relationship with him. He's given us a lot of information, and we've looked at the communications. And in Anthony Fauci's communications, we now have evidence that he was telling people like Francis Collins, read this and destroy it. Well, you can't do that. The executive branch, when they communicate, they're required to keep their communications, and they're required to do it on government devices. So we have this evidence, and I've summarized it again in a criminal referral to Trump's attorney general, and I still haven't gotten action. But there's a couple reasons we should do it. One, he shouldn't get away with lying. He shouldn't get away with destroying records. But two, we should check the pardon. Is an auto pen pardon valid? And is a pardon a retrospective pardon back 10 years that doesn't mention a crime? Can you give people a pardon for everything they did in a 10-year period? I can't imagine, and I think the court might narrow that.
Okay, so we get the point here. All this information being referred to the DOJ currently. Rand Paul sent it to the Biden DOJ, that would be meritless Garland. Now he sent it to Pam Bondi. And what's happened? Absolutely nothing. Has she made any type of sign that she's going to go and prosecute Anthony Fauci? Now, we know that Fauci got the Biden pardon, of course, but are those valid? Again, what is happening here? Can we actually pardon somebody who, one, lied to Congress, and two, destroyed government documents? And again, the whole facade of COVID in and of itself, right? He was the king of lockdowns, 2 weeks to slow the spread. By the way, Trump was also a part of the beginning stages of that. He later broke with that right away. But why didn't he even fire Tony Fauci? That's a big question, too. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear 2 masks, get a vaccine. If you don't get a vaccine, you got to still wear the mask. But if you get a vaccine, you still got to wear the mask. Don't worry. If you're dead, wear the mask. All these things. Based on nothing. No science whatsoever. And I know because I've looked at it. The masks were ineffective 100%. Absolutely 100%. You can go look at Dr. Simone Gold's research on that. Absolutely preposterous. 6 feet apart, same thing. Made it by an 8th grader whose father worked for the NIH, by the way. Right? She made a science fair project saying that, to slow the spread of diseases, you can stand 6 feet apart from children. Not based on one shred of science whatsoever. And this is the guy coming out saying, I represent the science. If you don't agree with me, you don't agree with the science. And by the way, the fact that he botched every single pandemic he'd ever been a part of in his 40-year span of being at the, infectious disease department of the NIH is very troubling in and of itself. Don't you think so? And by the way, he had a lot of money off COVID too, folks. Just so we're all clear of that. Maybe Rand Paul could look into that too. Made a lot of money off COVID, Anthony Fauci. A lot of money. And his edicts were very detrimental. By the way, so were the CDC's. How could a state government come in and say, the CDC has determined you must wear a mask, or else you can't come and shop in the store? Or you must use a vaccine passport in order to get access into this store. All these things are completely unconstitutional. And when people do things unconstitutional, even if they're a government official, they should be charged accordingly. And of course, we haven't seen any bit of that. There's no sign of it whatsoever in this DOJ, sadly enough. So I'm not shocked that Trump is moving away from Pam Bondi, but will he replace her is the other question. Oh, by the way, Trump is also taking a bit of a 180 on Iran as of late. Most of you probably know that Iran closed down its airspace as of lately, although it has resumed since then. But this is an NBC News. It says that Iran signaled that it would not move ahead with executing protesters and reopened its airspace on Thursday. As President Donald Trump is now left it being unclear, though, whether he would take military action over the regime's deadly crackdown. It also says here the United States began evacuating key personnel from its military bases inside the Middle East. So clearly there was some, obviously, escalation as of late. There were talks about going in. And we heard all the rhetoric as of late, right? That help is on the way, continue the protests, get the names of the killers and the abusers, because help is on the way. Now, everything is a 180. We're saying, well, you know what? Not going to happen now. We're not going to go in. And he made the following statement. And again, I'm not sure what prompted this, but he made the following statement just recently. Take a listen.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping. It's stopped. It's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or an execution or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it.
Okay, so again, I don't know who he spoke with. I can't imagine President Pezeshkian called him up and told him, hey, we're going to stop this because of you, Donald. Now, the number of the death toll obviously has changed. Some people said it was 12,000. Some people are saying it's 593. Then it changed to 2,500. All different things. All different numbers. We don't know the actual number of people that have been killed. But you have to understand there's a difference between protesters being killed by the government, by police, and you have to understand there's a difference between rioters that have been killed and charged by police. Two totally different things. Here's the problem with this entire situation. We know now, we got good evidence, that the people involved in these riots, and I say riots as in think about the George Floyd riots, people burning buildings, burning cars, attacking police officers, killing other civilians, attacking military bases. This is not part of the protest that we all heard and saw about. That was largely fabricated, by the way, as part of the protest against the government. On the first days of these protests, which took place after the start of the new year, the United States attacked the Iranian rial, which again devalued the currency. So what happened as a result of this? Well, people took to the streets. Business owners took to the streets. Shop owners took to the streets. All these different people took to the streets, and by and large, it was all a peaceful protest, as it could have been. No one was arrested. Nobody's killed. No one was stopped from protesting in Iran. Nothing. But later on the next day, again, the same protest took place. What you saw were, in the evening of the following day, you started to see riots. Now, who was behind the riots? Well, we now know that the Mossad, operating in connection with the CIA, were communicating with various different groups. We're talking about the Kurds. We're talking about the Baluchis. We're talking about the Meks. Okay? All these different factions took to the streets, and they were starting these riots. And everyone said, look at the people in the streets. They're rising up against the government. They're sick of the Ayatollah. They're sick of the Islamic regime that takes place in Iran right now. Isn't this wonderful? And then you had Donald Trump come out and say, if anyone is killed, any of these peaceful protesters are killed, we're going to have to take action. And that set the stage for a false flag event. But the problem was what Iran did. They started to arrest these people. And yes, some people were killed in these riots that took place. I'm not denying it. There were many people that were arrested. Almost 11,000 people were arrested. What they found was, and you're not seeing this on the mainstream, it was not in this NBC article. What took place was they got the phones of these people. And they cracked through Starlink. And what they figured out was that all these people were getting messages from the same woman, the same female Mossad agent, and it had the exact same message on it. She was speaking to them in Farsi. She's cloaked in the former Shah of Iran's flag, right? And she's telling them what to do, where to go, what to say if you're arrested, where to be, what to do when you get there. All these things. So it wasn't an organic protest against the government. Now, these people are either paid to or they just decided on their own because they were directed to. Again, these various groups I just mentioned to you. But this is what was happening. And then what happened once they shut off the internet? Well, there's no connection to these people anymore. There's no coordination. The organization died. And now you don't see even any protest happening right now in Iran. That's the problem. So how can Trump go in now and say it's time to go in when there's absolutely no protest taking place? It wouldn't make any sense at this point. So I think he missed his window to go in. And I don't think Israel is very happy about this too, by the way, folks. Now, whether or not people have been killed already by the government, I can't really speak on that yet. I haven't got any information about that. Obviously, that's something that could happen. But from what Trump is telling us, it seems as if they're putting a pause on it. Again, I don't know who he spoke to directly. But what you're seeing on the streets of Iran, as far as going up against the government, those are not organic protests. Yes, there are people inside Iran that do not like the government, don't get me wrong. But these protests are not organic. Just like the protests here in the United States are never organic, too. You think what's happening in Minneapolis is organic? Grassroots? Of course not. These are all very well coordinated. A lot of these people are paid protesters to be there. I think people in Minneapolis, when it's 30 degrees out, are not going to be out on the streets all single day wearing masks. What are they wearing face masks for? Well, of course, they're doing something illegal. And again, you're seeing the exact same attempt at what's happening inside Iran to fit their narrative. And somehow Americans have bought this. They haven't figured it out yet. That's also true that the United Nations Security Council has scheduled an emergency meeting Thursday after the request of the United States. It says Iran's judiciary said Thursday that a man feared to be facing execution would not face the death penalty. That's what's being reported. By the way, there's lots of these people who have been caught. I don't know if they'll be jailed, or I don't know what the process will be as of this point, but it seems like they're holding off, at least based on what Western media is telling us right now, that there's no plan for any further executions, and that's coming from President Trump and, of course, the White House. Now, the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, also appeared to step back from official calls for rapid justice by telling Fox News the other day, I believe he was with Brett Baer, if I'm not mistaken, that there would not be any hangings today or tomorrow or whatever, he said. He said he's confident about that, and he said there's no plans for hanging at all. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's interesting that they closed the airspace down. I think they were anticipating the United States could attack at any moment. Again, that could still happen. Trump didn't say that nothing would happen. But he's saying as of right now that the executions are held up. Does that not mean something could happen? Again, Israel and the United States have been planning this for a long time. But I think he totally lost his window of opportunity to do so. And now, what would he go in this weekend? Next weekend? What would that look like, though? The killings have allegedly stopped. The executions have allegedly stopped. What good basis could that be to go in and save people who don't need to be saved? People who have caused, again, chaos, who have killed other civilians. And again, I'm getting reports from people who live in Iran saying doctors are saying that people are coming in with gunshot wounds from handguns. Again, a bit odd coming from a government official. And again, that's not to say people can't be killed in the, crossfire between two different people. Don't get me wrong. But people setting fire to buildings, attacking military bases, killing other civilians, killing police officers, lighting police officers on fire, that's not a peaceful protest, folks. Never is. All right, let's move on, though. Let's move on. But yeah, it appears that as of around midday, the Iranian state television carried out a statement from the country's civil aviation authority saying that the nation's skies are hosting incoming and outgoing flights, and airports are providing services to passengers. That's out of the New York Post. So it seems they're, I guess, confident right now that they're going to open up their airspace again, but they are ready to go. And I don't think it helped, too, that Saudi Arabia said you can't use our airspace to attack Iran. And Qatar doesn't want their bases being used because they don't want to be bombed. Because that is the end result of what happens here, folks. If the United States were to go into attack today, tomorrow, this weekend, next weekend, it's going to risk a lot. Economically, geopolitically, absolutely 100%. Iran has already said after last time that if bombed, they are going to attack every single oil refinery, every single oil field inside the Middle East. You know how detrimental that would be to the economy? Does Trump want to be the face of that? The cause of that? Something tells me no. It's not worth it now. And by the way, every single American military base. So we're going to put our own troops at risk for what? Over the facade of saving lives in Iran? I don't think the false flag worked as they wanted it to be. And I think, the CIA, Mossad, they misstepped here too because they got found out. And people are starting to figure that out. And, Israel wants this. I don't know that Israel would attack on its own. They learned early on that Iran was pretty proficient as far as hitting specific targets inside Israel, of course, circumventing Iron Dome as well. So I don't think they're too keen on going into this alone. But I don't think President Trump wants this war. But I believe he thought he may have had an opportunity to, I guess, go in with it at one point. Hence the words. But make no mistake, we are going to be going to war with Iran at some point. Just not right now. And it will be a complete disaster, as you can imagine. So mark my words, folks, that is going to happen at some point. And we'll have to see when that happens. Right now, it seems to have been put on pause. Let's go over to some domestic issues right now, though. Let's talk about what's happening. This is out of Breitbart. It says Venezuelan illegal alien now attacks federal agent with a shovel in Minneapolis, then, of course, gets shot. Well, what a shock there, isn't it? Look at the mess happening on the streets of Minnesota. Look what's happening inside Minneapolis. Again, other blue cities and blue states, same thing. But here we go. It says here, according to DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin, federal agents were arresting a male from Venezuela when the person fled and began to resist and violently assault the officer. Two other people allegedly appeared from a nearby building and joined in on attacking the officer with a snow shovel and a broom handle. Fantastic, right? The officer, of course, fearing for his life, fired shots back at these people, striking the person of interest from Venezuela into the leg. She then said that the agent and the person who were shot were in the hospital, and the other two people accused of attacking the officer were now in custody. This is going to continue. By the way, again, they're not stopping these operations inside Minneapolis, among other places. They're simply not going to do it. But what we're seeing here now is more chaos in the streets. People are taking to the streets right now to protest ICE. And what we're seeing as a result of this, I'm told one of the incidents yesterday, we saw a woman being removed from her vehicle. We had all these ICE officers around the vehicle. They told the woman to either go through or move. And maybe she didn't understand, but they ended up removing this woman from the vehicle. And as she was getting taken from the vehicle, she said, I have a disability. I'm going to a doctor's office. And, they're still breaking the window. They're taking her out. We've got to be careful about what's happening here. Because there are innocent people in these situations that are just trying to go on their way. And they're getting, they're driving up to an intersection. All of a sudden, it's surrounded by people. It's surrounded by ICE. And as of what happened last week with Renee Good, you don't know what's happening here. Now, it seemed like the ICE officers were telling her to go through, and she wasn't. I don't know if she was purposely trying to block traffic. I really don't know. We haven't gotten the information on this. But what's got to happen, there's got to be some sense of order here. And you simply shouldn't just be removing women from their vehicle. I mean, there was a bunch of ICE officers just pulling this woman out, arresting her. We live in America, folks, the land of the free. And if somebody's trying to go on their way to a doctor's appointment, they shouldn't just be extracted from their vehicle. People have got to get a hold of the streets. Now, I know the Minneapolis Police Department are not helping with this, of course. State police aren't helping with this, so it's ICE on their own on the streets now. They're dealing with a very vile mob in the streets, of course. But they have to understand something. People are going to try to go to a doctor's appointment, so there's got to be some form of communication. Okay, and again, if an officer is telling you to go through, I would recommend following their commands. Now, that being said, ICE needs to understand that not everyone is out there to get them. And if someone is simply driving down the street to attend an appointment, see a doctor, whatever the case may be, they need to be, obviously, vocal on what they need that person to do. Ma'am, you need to get through this intersection right now. We need you to pull over here, please. Or you need to go forward. Here's the opening. We'll make sure you get through. Now, if somebody's purposely trying to drive their car into an intersection and block ICE, that's a totally different situation. I saw somebody yesterday getting arrested, an individual in a vehicle. ICE found this man, and he started driving back and forth into both ICE vehicles. There's two different things happening here. Now, again, I don't know what that situation is with the woman that was removed from the car, but I know when she got out, she said, I'm going to the doctors, I have a disability. Do we really need to take a woman out of her car and do this, folks? And this is what people feed off of. People see this. They say, look what ICE is doing. They're taking an innocent woman out of her vehicle. They're just trying to go on her way. And they're arresting her now. So, again, I don't have all the answers to this. But we need to understand something. Not everyone is guilty about what's going on here. Not everybody's guilty. And ICE needs to understand this. So if they're in charge, they need to be in charge. They need to get people out of the streets. They need to make sure that traffic is moving on its way. And the people that interfere with a lawful operation need to be held accountable. That's what it comes down to. Because now you have 8 different cameras going up to seeing this woman getting arrested. It's not good for her. It's not good for ICE. And obviously, you're trampling on someone else's rights. That's a big problem as well. And by the way, you're seeing the uptick of the hateful rhetoric, of course, the resistance against the men and women of ICE. We have federal law enforcement officers are now facing a 1,300% increase in assaults. And again, I don't for a second pretend that it's easy what ICE is doing in these hostile environments, in these hostile cities, egged on by the mayor, egged on by Tim Walz. He's another disaster. But these are all problems. Absolutely. And then we're seeing people more brazen now. We're seeing other people coming out with a snow shovel to attack an ICE agent. Now it's 3 versus 1. So we've got to get a grip on what's happening here, though, because, again, you cannot at any point trample on someone else's rights. A woman has a right to drive down the street in America. That's something I believe in. You have a right to go freely on your way without any type of persecution. People make mistakes. Hey, they're driving down the street. All of a sudden, you come to an intersection, it's full of people. It's full of ICE agents. You know what to do. Do you back up? What do you do? Now, if the woman is going on her way and she just didn't understand what the officer was saying, and all of a sudden he says, all right, time to get out of the car. And they extract her, and they just throw her hands behind her back, 2, 3 men. That's a bad look, folks. It's a problem. We need to have law and order in our streets. I know it doesn't help that Tim Walz, that Jacob Fry don't give a damn. They like this chaos. They want this chaos. They've encouraged this chaos. But people should not be in the streets protesting. I don't care what it is. You don't have a right to protest in the streets. You don't own the streets. If you want to stay on City Hall property and hold your signs and yell out obscenities about ICE agents, whatever. You don't have a right to go and do things like this, to interfere with the way people move throughout the day. That's simply wrong. And, when I was living in L.A., people were taking over freeways to protest ICE. I said, what is this nonsense? What is this? During the George Floyd riot, same thing, closing down freeways. People are driving on the freeway, and all of a sudden everyone stopped and backed up because people are just hanging out in the middle of the freeway. And, of course, the mayor doesn't do anything about it. Garcetti at the time wouldn't do anything about it. Bass wouldn't do anything about it now. Gavin Newsom sure as hell isn't going to do anything about it. But again, this whole thing stemmed out of proportion because of this shooting last week, because this woman made a poor choice. You shouldn't be trying to block traffic of ICE agents. When an officer gives you a lawful command to get out of a vehicle, you get out of a vehicle. You don't sit there and go, well, I'm going to flee the scene now. Well, that's great. Now you have what? ICE chasing it down the street? And again, I've heard both sides of the argument. Again, no one's happy about this, I don't think. But why are people being egged on to act like this? Why do people feel like this is something they should do with their time every day? To stymie what ICE is doing. Again, I told you before, if you want to protest, go protest. Just make sure you're not in the street. Make sure you're not blocking people from walking down the street. Using your vehicle to block ICE, and then evade ICE, and then drive right into somebody, which we now know that Officer Ross, has internal bleeding. You don't get too much sympathy for this, folks. So again, please be safe on the streets, but you don't own the streets. Yes, you have a right to protest. You have a right to interfere with an operation. Two things can be true at the same time. And by the way, ICE doesn't have the right to stifle American citizens or their right to move freely throughout the community. So there's got to be two things that are at play at the same time. And again, what happened last week was absolutely unfortunate on both sides. But people need to stop acting like this. And the reason people feel like they can act like this is because we've seen this happen. We saw it happen in California. I gave you the example last week. A legal alien drives his car into an ICE agent. They open fire. The judge dismisses the case completely, giving you carte blanche to do whatever the hell you seem fit. These are problems. And other people see this. They say, oh, well, they got away with it in California. Hey, I can get away with it in Minneapolis. I can get away with it in Seattle, in Portland. They got my back. The judges got my back. The governor, the mayor, the city council. The state legislature, they all got my back. So I'm going to go and, block traffic in Minneapolis. I'm going to show those ICE what's going on. And then we have unfortunate situations like that. And no, by the way, I don't think, an ICE officer defending himself is illegal, but I also don't think that ICE officers should have just complete immunity to do whatever the hell they want either. But there's two sides to every coin, folks. So let's understand that, please. Oh, by the way, since we're talking about, what's happening with Venezuelans, I guess we'll say that. Washington Times has an article saying Senate Republicans now flip votes to quash Venezuela war powers resolution. What is going on here? Can Congress do anything effectively? What's the point of electing these people if they're just going to punt it to the president? Since they're now Senate Republicans on Thursday just flipped enough votes to kill Democrats' war powers resolution that sought to block President Trump from further military action against Venezuela without congressional approval. Well, naturally, because the Constitution gives that power to the Congress. It shouldn't just be going right to the executive branch. It says the procedural vote to defeat the resolution was successful after Mr. Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio made personal appeals to 5 GOP senators who voted with the Democrats last week to advance this. 2 of them, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri and Todd Young of Indiana, both changing their positions, giving it a 50-50 tie vote, and J.D. Vance coming in to break that tiebreaker vote in favor of the administration. Now, here's the thing. Why would Senate Republicans do this? This is their role. This is their job. This is why we elect them. Now, all the bill says is any further military action inside Venezuela needs to go through Congress first. Now, that doesn't mean President Trump can't go to Congress and say, listen, we need to go do X, Y, Z. I need your approval to go do so. That's how the law works. We're not seeing that now. Now it's going directly into President Trump to make whatever plan he deems worthy for whatever given reason, for whatever. Doesn't even matter. Forget the fact that we completely didn't even follow international law through the last extraction, getting Maduro out. Oh, but this is a problem. Absolutely a very big problem. And we need to give that power back to the Congress. The president does not have the right to just simply decide we're going to take military action on a sovereign nation. Now, that doesn't mean the president cannot defend the country before letting Congress know what's happening. Those are 2 totally different things. So in other words, for example, if Venezuela had, F-15s coming to the United States to bomb Mar-a-Lago or bomb D.C. or bomb Miami, the president doesn't need to call a quorum for Congress and get the military approval to defend the United States. 2 totally different things. Let's understand that. Then the president is justified to act on that on his own. But to make a clear decision to go into a sovereign nation, to extract a president without any sort of international law, and of course even U.S. law, by the way, let me just state that to you. By the way, extradition laws. We totally just circumvented all that. We saw that happen with the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez. The DOJ did the exact same process they're supposed to do. They cooperated with the Honduras government. They reviewed the evidence. They reviewed the information. They extradited him back to the United States, and he went to a United States court and was found guilty for transporting 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. We completely just left all this out. We simply got a warrant and just ran with it. We didn't follow any other type of procedure with Venezuela or their government to allegedly hold Nicolas Maduro responsible for crimes that, again, in my own evidence that I find or research that I do, I can't seem to find one shred of evidence that would support any of this. Now, as of late, I will tell you this, as of late, Trump has said that he's making progress now with the interim president, that'd be Delcy Rodriguez of Venezuela, working with the government. I don't buy they're sending us 30 million barrels of oil right now, or 50, whatever number they tell us. because we know they can only get about 934,000 barrels a day. I don't know how they're sending us this much oil this quickly, but Trump seems to be pleased with this. So again, I don't know why Congress would punt like this. I don't like this. Senator Rand Paul, of course, who tends to be the more even keel one in following the law. Susan Collins, who I'm not too fond of. Lisa Murkowski, I'm not too fond of. But they're right on this. They maintain their support for the War Powers Resolution despite the administration's pressure campaign. Now, Senator Rand Paul went on to say that he had a spirited conversation last week with him. I'm obviously referring to President Trump. And Senator Paul said that it is a disservice to the people who put their lives on the line that the President Trump's administration refused to acknowledge that the military strikes against Venezuelan drug boats and the operation to capture Nicolas Maduro was a war. Well, he's right about that. Blowing up boats in the Caribbean without due process? Again, completely evading international law. Trump went on to say to the New York Times last week, he doesn't need international law. He just needs his own mind. Well, folks, what is that? Again, we need to follow the Constitution. Blowing up drug boats without due process, big problem. Very big problem. Then you run into the problem, too, of, again, capturing Nicolas Maduro without any due process there. Without any extradition treaties being in place. Following those procedures. So there's a lot of things at play here. And, of course, now we're just simply going to say we're going to take whatever's in the ground because we own it. This is not good, folks. This is not good at all. And for the Senate Republicans to just give carte blanche to President Trump to go into Venezuela with military action whenever he feels like it. So let me ask you this. If Delcy Rodriguez, the sitting president right now, if she decides that she doesn't want to sell oil to the United States anymore, is that game for military action? I don't even know. I guess anything could be. Look at these bogus charges they threw on Maduro. You can't say what you want about Maduro and the way he handles his government and the country. But these are two totally different things. These are really, really bad precedents to have. And the rhetoric is dangerous. Absolutely dangerous. When we say, well, we'll go into Venezuela when we want. We'll perform military operations when we want. We'll go into Colombia. We'll go into Cuba, Nicaragua. We'll go to Mexico. Hell, we'll go into Greenland, too. We'll go right to Greenland and take it by force if we have to. Forget the fact that it cost us about $700 billion to go in there. It's a very odd time, folks. But at the end of the day, I always tell you the truth. We've got to follow the Constitution. In this situation with Venezuela, we have not followed the Constitution at all. At all. We have not followed it. And that's a very upsetting thing to see. Now, one other thing I want to mention on this topic before we move on, it appears, and again, I don't know why we're continuing to think that this is okay to do. It says here that the United States forces sees 6th oil tanker near Venezuela. So now we're just stealing oil tankers. This is piracy in and of itself. I don't understand how anyone advising the president or the president himself could sit there and go, this is fine. This is absolutely fine. It says here the United States forces seized the 6th oil tanker on Thursday morning, according to U.S. Southern Command. It was a pre-dawn raid. Marines and sailors alike launched from the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier in the Caribbean and apprehended the vessel Veronica, according to the military's Southern Command. Now, it says here the Veronica is the latest oil tanker operating in defiance of President Trump's established quarantine of sanctioned vessels in the Caribbean. Now, let's pause. Sanctioned vessels in the Caribbean. What does that mean, by the way? So President Trump can just decide what vessels are moving in and out of the Caribbean? 1,500 to 2,000 miles away from us? No, he can't, folks. I mean, he can go to the UN and get a vote on it and make that law that way. That would uphold the law. But you can't just simply make U.S. sanctions between the U.S. and Venezuela and simply say, we can do whatever we want now with your oil. We can decide who you trade with. We can't do that at all. Now, UN sanctions could do that, but we haven't sought that. So, again, piracy on the high seas, folks, I don't think that's a good look moving forward at all. It says here that the move could raise tensions with Russia, which has been moving to protect Dark Fleet tankers in recent weeks. It says here that the Veronica has now changed its name to Galileo and is now registered with a new owner. This is according to a shipping database. The tanker reflagged to sail under the Russian tricolor, as many shadow tankers have been doing recently. Their hope is to avoid interception by the U.S. military and skirt the blockade on Venezuelan oil movements. Now, I talked to you recently, too, about this. China, Russia, they all have contracts with the Venezuelan government. Well, they're making trade, right? Makes sense. Here's the problem. When we go in and we say this oil is ours, or you have oil on this tanker that just left Venezuela, and we're going to take it now. We're going to take your ship too. We're going to take the people on your ship. Folks, that's piracy. There's no legal precedent for this at all. We don't own Venezuela. Prior to contrary belief that we do, apparently. We don't own the oil in the ground in Venezuela. Another mischaracterization. I don't understand how we can continue to go out and do things like this. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's only heating up the tension between the United States and Russia and China. And what's going to happen as a result of this, we stole 1.9 million barrels of oil from China. And I imagine China would be in lawsuits over this. I mean, we literally stole their oil. And you can have the mindset that we own the oil because two private oil companies in the United States invested in infrastructure. But as far as law is concerned, they purchased that oil, and we took that oil. That's piracy, folks. And I don't know what we're going to gain from this. I don't see the ploy in this. We know, because I told you, how difficult it is to get that crude oil out of the ground in Venezuela. It's not as lucrative as one believed. But the idea that we're going to go and commit to this now and to behave like this as a sovereign nation is very, very troubling, folks, to me. And I don't see this being anything but chaotic for the United States moving forward, just so we're all clear on this. Now, it does say here in the article that the U.S. officials have said that they are working with the Venezuelan government and that the U.S. would receive Venezuelan crude that it is backed up in onshore facilities and floating tankers that serve as oil storage and then sell it. Well, fine. If we want to continue to buy oil, and by the way, we were buying oil from them last year. If we want to continue to buy oil from Venezuela, fine, whatever, I don't care. But the idea that we're going to use the Donroe Doctrine, which is a knockoff of the Monroe Doctrine, which is not even a law, it was a speech to Congress. And by the way, the speech had to do with, obviously, foreign nations, particularly Europe, coming back in to colonize the Western Hemisphere. Well, that's not happening. They're just simply conducting trade. And again, we obviously don't want that trade to happen. All right, so more chaos, and more chaos is what we're seeing. Not a good start to 2026, folks, I don't think. All right, I got another good article for us in the Washington Examiner. And it has to do with the Trump tariffs, too. And by the way, I'm eager to see what the Supreme Court is going to rule on behalf of President Trump's tariffs. But the article falsely begins by saying President Trump's tariffs agenda has not caused inflation yet, as predicted by many economists. But it does appear to be having an unintended consequence, shrinking America's manufacturing workforce. Let's pause for a second. Let's pretend I'm a novice and I don't know what I'm talking about for a second. And let's say I read this for the first time. And I read it a little differently, though. And I said, President Trump's taxes hasn't caused increased inflation. Because that's exactly what a tariff is. It's a tax. It's a tax on imports that come into the United States. It's a duty paid by the government that's exporting to the United States. They pay the Treasury upon arrival. and they conduct trade in the United States. And that's how things work. Okay. So if President Trump is putting a tax now on those imports that come in the United States from whatever said country, doesn't matter, who's going to make up that difference of the 5%, 10%, 25%, 50%? Doesn't matter what it is. It's got to fall upon you, the consumer, folks. That's the way it's got to be. So if you're paying 10% on everything you send to the United States, would you usually keep taking money out of your own pocket? You're going to go broke. That cost has got to translate to somebody else. And that somebody else is we, the consumers. And we know that inflation is up 3% from this time last year. We know that the current CPI was up just last week as well. So we have seen inflation. So I don't know. Again, I don't know why the Washington Examiner said this. It's a bit odd to me. Now they can say it hasn't caused mass inflation. Maybe they want to reword it, but it has caused some inflation. Absolutely. Absolutely it has. But the bigger part behind this, of course, is the manufacturing. Now, though Trump didn't make good on his campaign promise, it says, to wipe out the post-pandemic price spikes immediately upon entering office, economic forecasts claiming that the president's tariffs would drive inflation even higher have simply not come to pass. Again, I just reiterated that to you that yes, it has. Now, in some categories, it has gone down. The price of gas has gone down. Now below the $3 mark per gallon average for every single state in more than 40 states. California obviously is an outlier thanks to Gavin Newsom and the psychopaths in Sacramento that pass gas tax after gas tax and increase it whenever they feel like it. Well, not when they feel like it, but once a year they raise the gas tax. So pretty much whenever they do feel like it. But anyways, Trump still and his allies have claimed that a core driver of the tariff agenda was to rebuild America's manufacturing base. And it makes sense, right? We put a tax on goods coming out of China. The owners of this company that are American decide, hey, you know what? It's not cost effective for me to do this. And I'll simply just bring my company back to the United States. Now, in total, factory jobs declined by some 70,000 since April of 2025, when President Trump then announced Liberation Day tariffs, which, again, I don't know what he's liberating us from, with manufacturing and employment slipping below levels set during the pre-coronavirus period of President Trump's first term in office. So we've lost manufacturing jobs. By the way, President Trump gave us 800,000 manufacturing jobs in his first term. So there's that as well. Now, meanwhile, the United States Institute for Supply Management's Purchasing Managers Index, which tracks new orders contracting, production expansion, employment contracting, and suppliers deliveries fell to 47.9 in the month of December of just last year. The 10th consecutive month PMI contracted following 2 months of expansion after President Trump began his second term. So looking at expansion, looking at manufacturing, looking at the GDP for that sector in America was contracting in December. It was 58% in November of just last year. And the percentage of manufacturing GDP in strong contraction, again defined by a composite of PMI of 45% or lower, increased to 43%, compared to 39% in November. So, what are we seeing here? Are we seeing the jobs coming back? Are we seeing the manufacturing coming back to America? And the answer to that is no. We're simply not. We're simply not, and of course the stats for that show it. So, what is my answer to all this? Well, number one, the tariffs are causing a bit of inflation. Not a lot of inflation, but they are causing some inflation. Now, some of you will point to, Gerace, look at the energy, though. If we had all these tariffs on, energy, we'd see the price of energy go up instead of going down. Now, I might say touche to you, except for the fact of one important thing. When President Trump announced that he was going to create these liberation tariffs, or Liberation Day tariffs, he went in there and he said, I'm going to put a 10% tariff on everything that comes in the United States. That was the first step he took. Well, the issue, folks, ladies and gentlemen, is that on April 3rd, though, remember he announced this in January. On April 3rd, the White House then announced that the crude oil, natural gas, refined petroleum products are exempt from the new 10% baseline tariff, folks. So they're excluded. They're excluded. And of course, Donald Trump, wisely enough, began more drilling permits. He's talked about reopening the Keystone XL pipeline, which makes transportation of oil much cheaper and quicker. So all these factors are at play. By the way, the United States is producing somewhere between, 19.4 million barrels of oil per day. Not bad, folks. Not bad at all. So when we look at this, we say, well, look, we have tariffs on everything, yet oil's going down. See, that's an example. Well, there's no tariff on the oil coming in the United States. Let's just be clear on this. Okay, so I don't want anyone to say I didn't tell you so, but we're not tariffing the oil, and that's the reason why, because we want the oil prices to drop significantly. When the prices of oil drops, generally speaking, other prices will drop as well. But when you look at supply and demand, when you look at the fact that we're importing more than we're exporting, when you look at the fact that when oil prices drop, typically everything else, getting it to market, transporting it in the United States, the fact that oil is in 145 different other products aside your gasoline and your vehicles and your engine block, we get to see that when the price of oil goes down, sometimes the prices will drop as well. The problem was we increased tariffs on everything else. 10% here, 25% there, 50% someplace else. It was, at one point, we wanted to do 157% tariff on Chinese goods. They account for roughly 32% of all the imports that come into this country, folks. I don't think we would want that. Do you? Yeah. And again, we got to get back to energy independence. We're still bringing in roughly about 8.5 million barrels of oil into the United States per day. So let's get back on that. I think we'll start to see prices hopefully start to drop more. But we've got to get the manufacturing back. And how do you get the manufacturing back? You cut taxes, you cut regulations, you incentivize companies to come back to the United States. But one of the other things you do is you put quotas on what you can bring into the United States. You can only bring in X number of refrigerators in the United States per year. That makes companies go, you know what? I need to maybe put my operation back in the United States if I want to start making some money. And then we become a major exporter again, like we once were, and not a major importer. Just my thoughts on that. All right. Well, we got about 2 minutes left, folks. Let me see if I can go through this article quickly so we can close out. That is my last article I wanted to go over with you, too, by the way. So out of Breitbart, it says that State Department freezes visas for welfare-dependent migrants from 75 different countries. Well, maybe Marco Rubio is doing something I can finally agree with. Who knows? Now, he announced such a thing, saying that the State Department will pause immigrant visa processing from 75 different countries whose migrants take welfare from the American people at unacceptable rates. The freeze will remain active until the United States can ensure that new immigrants, will not extract wealth from the American people. We look at countries, several of them, Somalia, Haiti, Iran, Eritrea, various different countries. But here's the bigger question to you. Why? Why would the United States bring in immigrants from whatever said country? Why would you bring people in the country that had to go directly on welfare? Does that make any bit of sense to anybody listening? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we do something like that? When you bring in immigrants to a country, you need to bring in people that are going to be conducive to the American populace. People that are going to add to the system. People that are going to bring benefit to this country. Not people that are going to leech off the system and suck it dry. That's something we got to get back to, folks. We really, really need to. Folks, thank you again for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Make sure you're staying prepped. Make sure you enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you learned something. Share the show. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more breaking news on The Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good. Stay busy. God bless.